Life has a funny way of leading us exactly where we need to be, even when we least expect it. For Thomas Chen, a 35-year-old elementary school teacher in Minneapolis, that moment came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in spring. He had always loved working with kids. It was why he became a teacher in the first place. But he never imagined that a routine volunteer session at Hope Children's Home would completely change his life. The sun was streaming through the windows of the children's home that day, casting warm patches of light across the wooden floor where kids played with worn but well-loved toys. Thomas had been volunteering there for several months, helping kids with homework and organizing activities. But this particular afternoon was different. In the corner of the playroom, he noticed a group of 5 sisters huddled together. The oldest, a quiet 12-year-old with bright eyes and protective arms around her youngest sister, caught his attention first. She was helping the 4-year-old color within the lines of a picture book, while their other sisters aged 8, a pair of twins with matching braids, and 6 sat nearby, working on a puzzle together. "Those are the Wilson sisters," Mrs. Rodriguez, a home supervisor, told him quietly. "They've been here for 8 months. Finding a home for 5 siblings together. Well, it's nearly impossible. We might have to separate them soon." Thomas felt something shift in his chest at those words. He'd seen countless stories of siblings being separated in the system through his years of teaching, and each one broke his heart. But this time felt different. As he watched the older sister gently correct her little sister's grip on the crayon, he saw something that reminded him of his own childhood, the unbreakable bond of siblings looking out for each other. Over the next few weeks, Thomas found himself spending more time with the girls. He learned that the oldest loved to read and dreamed of becoming a writer. The twins shared a passion for soccer and could communicate with just a look. The 6-year-old was surprisingly good at math and spent hours solving simple addition problems. And the youngest? She was a bundle of energy who loved to dance to any music she could hear. But it wasn't all happiness and games. He saw how the older sister would save part of her dessert for the younger ones, a habit born from years of uncertainty. He noticed how they all tensed up slightly whenever adults raised their voices, even in laughter. These girls had been through more in their young lives than many adults he knew. One night, sitting alone in his modest 3-bedroom house, Thomas couldn't stop thinking about them. The walls seemed too quiet, the rooms too empty. He had a stable job, a supportive community, and enough love in his heart to share. But was he crazy to even consider it? Him, a single man, adopting 5 girls. His hands shook slightly as he opened his laptop and began researching adoption requirements. The more he read, the more overwhelming it seemed. The process would be challenging enough for a single person wanting to adopt 1 child, let alone 5. And then there was the matter of transracial adoption. He knew it would come with its own unique challenges and responsibilities. But then he remembered something one of his students once said. Being scared of something big doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means it's important enough to make you nervous. Thomas closed his laptop and walked to his spare rooms. Standing in the doorway of each empty space, he began to imagine what they could become. Bedrooms filled with laughter. Homework spread across tables. Walls decorated with artwork and family photos. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew some people wouldn't understand. But in his heart, he also knew it was right. The next morning, he walked into Hope Children's Home with purpose in his steps. His life was about to change forever, and somehow, that felt exactly right. The day Thomas announced his decision to adopt all 5 sisters, you could have heard a pin drop in his family's living room. His mother's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips, and his father's newspaper slowly lowered to reveal a deeply concerned face. His sister Rose, usually the most supportive person in his life, sat in uncomfortable silence. "Have you lost your mind?" His father finally spoke, breaking the tension. A single man adopting 5 children. The system won't even consider it. His mother reached across the table, patting his hand with worry in her eyes. "Honey, I know you have a big heart, but this is too much. Maybe start with one child." But this was just the beginning of the resistance Thomas would face. When he walked into the adoption agency the next day, the social worker's expression said it all. She shuffled through his paperwork with pursed lips, occasionally glancing up at him with barely concealed skepticism. "Mr. Chen," she began carefully, "while we appreciate your interest, you have to understand the complexity of this situation. You're not just talking about adoption. You're talking about transracial adoption of 5 siblings. As a single parent, the challenges would be significant." Social media wasn't any kinder. When Thomas shared his intentions in an online adoption support group, the comments started rolling in. Some were supportive, but others cut deep. "Another white savior complex," one person wrote. "Those girls need a mother figure," posted another. "How will he teach them about their culture? This is inappropriate." The words stung, but they also made him think harder about his decision. Even his best friend David, who had supported him through every wild idea since college, seemed hesitant. Over their weekly basketball game, David tried to reason with him. "Buddy, I know you're great with kids, but 5 at once. That's like jumping into the deep end without learning to swim first. Plus, have you thought about dating? What woman would want to take on that kind of responsibility?" The criticism wasn't just coming from people he knew. At the grocery store, the bank, even at school. Once people heard about his plans, the looks of doubt were unmistakable. Some were polite enough to keep their opinions to themselves, but others weren't so subtle. "Those poor girls," he overheard one teacher whisper in the break room. "They need a proper family." But something interesting happened as the weeks went by. The more people doubted him, the more determined Thomas became. He started researching everything he could about transracial adoption. He reached out to other families who had gone through similar experiences. He found online communities of adoptive parents who shared their stories, the good, the bad, and everything in between. One evening, after a particularly rough day of defending his decision to yet another skeptical relative, Thomas sat down and made a list. On one side, he wrote all the reasons people said he couldn't or shouldn't do this. On the other side, he wrote why he wanted to. Looking at that second list, the thought of those girls being separated, the way they lit up when he visited, the potential he saw in each of them. He knew in his heart that this was right. He thought about the oldest sister, how she carried herself with such grace despite everything she'd been through. He remembered the twins giggling together over inside jokes, the middle sister's quiet determination when solving math problems, and the youngest one's infectious laugh. They weren't just case numbers or a challenging situation. They were 5 little girls who deserved a chance to stay together, to grow up as sisters, to have a place to call home. Yes, people had their doubts. Yes, the road ahead would be difficult. But as Thomas looked around his empty house that evening, he didn't see the obstacles everyone else saw. Instead, he saw possibility. He saw homework sessions at the kitchen table, birthday celebrations in the backyard, Christmas mornings filled with joy, and 5 beautiful souls growing up together, supporting each other, becoming the amazing women they were meant to be. The critics could say what they wanted. Thomas knew this wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about giving 5 sisters a chance at the family they deserved. If anyone thought Thomas would give up easily, they were about to be proven wrong. The next 18 months became a testament to what determination and love could accomplish. Every morning, he'd wake up an hour earlier than usual to attend online parenting classes before heading to school to teach. His lunch breaks were filled with phone calls to adoption agencies and social workers. His evenings, those were dedicated to preparing for the biggest change of his life. His small house began to transform. The spare room that once served as a home office became a cozy bedroom with bunk beds for the twins. The rarely used guest room turned into a space for the oldest sister, complete with a desk for homework and a bookshelf waiting to be filled. The sunroom, That became a shared bedroom for the two youngest, painted in cheerful colors with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. But the physical changes were just the beginning. Thomas knew he needed to understand more about raising black daughters in today's world. He reached out to Mrs. Parker, a black teacher at his school known for her community involvement. At first, she was skeptical, but his sincerity won her over. "Listen," she told him one afternoon over coffee, "these girls will need more than just love. They'll need to understand their heritage, their beauty, their worth in a world that doesn't always see it." She introduced him to her church community, where several mothers took him under their wing, teaching him everything from hair care to cultural traditions. The adoption classes were intense. Thomas filled notebook after notebook with information about trauma-informed parenting, attachment theory, and the unique challenges of transracial adoption. Some nights, he'd stay up until midnight, practicing braiding techniques on mannequin heads he bought online. His fingers would cramp, but he kept at it until he could do basic braids and twists. Money was tight. Between the adoption fees, home modifications, and preparing for 5 growing girls, Thomas's teacher's salary was stretched thin. He picked up weekend tutoring jobs and sold his beloved motorcycle. Worth every penny, he'd say whenever someone questioned his sacrifices. The home studies were nerve-wracking. Social workers scrutinized every corner of his house, his life, his preparations. They questioned his support system, his understanding of racial issues, his ability to handle 5 traumatized children. One particularly tough social worker asked, "What makes you think you can be both mother and father to these girls?" Thomas looked her straight in the eye and replied, "I don't need to be both. I just need to be a good parent." Something in his answer, in his quiet confidence, seemed to resonate. During this time, he kept visiting the girls at the children's home. He'd bring books for the oldest, math puzzles for the middle sister, and art supplies for everyone. The twins taught him their secret handshake, and the youngest would always greet him with a new dance move. These visits became his motivation on tough days. One rainy afternoon, during a particularly challenging meeting with the adoption board, someone asked why he was putting himself through all this. Thomas pulled out his phone and showed them a picture of all 5 girls together, their smiles brightening up the screen. "Because when I look at this photo," he said, his voice steady, "I don't see 5 problems to solve. I see 5 sisters who deserve to stay together. I see 5 futures that could be amazing with the right support. I see my daughters." The room fell silent. Then one of the board members, who had been particularly hard on him throughout the process, slowly nodded. Sometimes the simplest truths are the most powerful. Through it all, Thomas kept learning, growing, and preparing. He created photo albums for each girl, leaving plenty of empty pages for new memories. He learned to cook their favorite meals, studied their medical histories, and even took a child psychology course at the local community college. This wasn't just about passing inspections or checking boxes. This was about becoming the parent these girls needed him to be. Every challenge, every doubt, every late night and early morning. It was all leading to one goal: keeping these sisters together and giving them the home they deserved. The day Thomas brought the girls home was filled with a mix of excitement and nervous energy. The oldest sister, Anne, held onto her backpack tightly as she stepped into the house, her eyes taking in every detail. The twins, Grace and Joy, couldn't contain their excitement, running from room to room with gasps of delight. Lily, the 60-year-old, stayed close to Thomas, her small hand in his, while little Rose, the youngest, was already climbing onto the couch to get a better view of her new home. "Is this really all ours?" Grace asked, her eyes wide as she discovered the bedroom she'd share with her twin. The room was exactly as Thomas had planned. 2 matching beds with colorful quilts, desks for homework, and a special area for their growing soccer trophy collection. Joy was already claiming the bed near the window, something that would later become their first sisterly squabble in their new home. The first few weeks were a beautiful chaos. Thomas quickly learned that his carefully planned schedule needed to be more flexible. Mornings became a dance of getting 5 girls ready for school, making sure everyone had the right backpack, the right lunch, and their homework signed. He'd watch YouTube tutorials late at night, learning to do different hairstyles, his fingers becoming more confident with each attempt. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The first night, Rose woke up crying from a nightmare, calling for her birth mother. Thomas sat with her until sunrise, telling her stories and assuring her she was safe. Anne, usually so composed, would sometimes retreat into long silences, processing all the changes in her young life. The twins, despite their initial excitement, had moments where they tested boundaries, seeing if this new home was really permanent. Meal times became both challenging and rewarding. Thomas discovered that Lily wouldn't eat anything green. The twins had opposite food preferences despite being identical, and Anne was particular about her food not touching on the plate. He started involving them in meal planning and preparation, turning dinner into a family activity. Soon, the kitchen became filled with laughter as they all learned to cook together, even if sometimes the pancakes were oddly shaped or the cookies slightly burnt. One evening, about 2 months in, Thomas was helping Rose with her bath when he heard music playing downstairs. He found the other girls in the living room, having pushed the furniture aside to create a dance floor. They were teaching each other moves, giggling and twirling. Without a word, they pulled him into their circle, and suddenly he was attempting to follow Anne's lead in what she called the latest dance. He probably looked ridiculous, but the joy on their faces made it worth every awkward step. The hardest moments often came unexpectedly. Like when Lily had a meltdown in the grocery store because they didn't have the same cereal brand she was used to at the children's home. Or when Joy refused to go to school one morning, terrified that if she left, the house and her new family would disappear. Each challenge required patience, understanding, and often, creative problem solving. Hair care became a special bonding time. Every Sunday evening, Thomas would set up what the girls called their home salon. He'd put on their favorite music, set out healthy snacks, and carefully do each girl's hair for the week ahead. What started as a necessary task became a cherished ritual, a time when stories were shared, secrets were whispered, and trust was built one braid at a time. The breakthrough moments made everything worthwhile. Like when Anne finally called him Dad for the first time, not during a big moment, but while asking him to pass the salt at dinner. Or when the twins fell asleep on either side of him during movie night, completely at peace. When Lily proudly showed him her first A+ in math, and when Rose drew a family picture for her class, with all 7 of them together, including their pet fish. Through it all, Thomas learned that parenting wasn't about being perfect. It was about being present. Some days were messy, some nights were long, but slowly, surely, they were becoming a family. Not just by law or circumstance, but by choice, by love, and by the countless small moments that knit their hearts together. Life has a way of testing you just when you think you've got everything figured out. For Thomas and his daughters, these tests often came from the most unexpected places. Their neighborhood, while peaceful on the surface, began to show its true colors in subtle ways that broke Thomas's heart but strengthened their family's bond. It started one sunny afternoon at the local park. The twins were showing off their soccer skills when Thomas overheard 2 mothers whispering nearby. "I heard he's not even married," one said. How did they let someone like him adopt all those girls? The twins pretended not to hear, but their kicks became harder, their faces more determined. That evening, during their family dinner, Joy quietly asked, "Dad, why do people think you can't be our father?" The grocery store became another battlefield of stares and whispers. The cashier would often look confused when Rose called Thomas Daddy, or when Anne helped him pick out the right hair products. Once, an elderly woman even asked if he was babysitting for charity. Little Lily, usually the quietest, surprised everyone by speaking up. "He's not babysitting. He's our dad." School brought its own challenges. During a parent-teacher conference, Anne's teacher seemed more interested in questioning Thomas about their family situation than discussing Anne's excellent progress in English. The twins' soccer coach initially hesitated to let Thomas volunteer as team assistant, until the girls proved to be the team's star players. Guest talent runs in the family, Thomas would joke, making the girls giggle. But the hardest moments were the quiet ones. Like when Rose came home crying because a classmate told her she couldn't be Thomas's daughter because they didn't look alike. Or when the twins were left out of a birthday party invitation that seemed to include every other girl in their class. Each incident became a family discussion around their dinner table, their safe space where they could share their feelings and find strength in each other. Thomas learned to advocate for his daughters while teaching them to stand proud. When the school's father-daughter dance came around, he didn't just attend. He helped organize it, making sure it celebrated all kinds of families. He joined the PTA, coached youth soccer, and became an active member of their community, showing up in ways that made it impossible for people to ignore or dismiss their family. One day, Anne came home excited about a family tree project. But her excitement turned to worry when she realized the template didn't quite fit their unique family. Thomas stayed up late helping her create a new design, one that honored both their present family and their past. The project ended up winning first place, and more importantly, helped other kids in her class understand that families come in all forms. The girls found their own ways to deal with the challenges. The twins started a sisters club at school, welcoming anyone who felt different or left out. Lily, inspired by her dad's teaching, began tutoring younger kids in math, earning respect from teachers and students alike. Rose's natural ability to make friends slowly changed the attitudes of other parents, who couldn't resist her charming personality during playdates. Through it all, Thomas made sure home was their sanctuary. Every evening, they'd share their rose and thorn, the best and hardest parts of their day. Some nights were filled with tears, others with laughter, but always with honesty and understanding. He taught them that being different wasn't a weakness, it was their strength. Their family movie nights became legendary in the neighborhood. Soon, other kids started asking to join, bringing their parents along. What began as curious observation turned into genuine friendships. The same mothers who once whispered at the park were now asking Thomas for parenting advice, amazed at how well-behaved and confident his girls were. As the seasons changed, so did their community's perception. The family that once stood out now stood tall, their bond obvious to anyone who took the time to look past their differences. Thomas and his daughters weren't just surviving the challenges. They were showing their community what a real family looks like, built on love, strengthened by challenges, and unbreakable in their unity. 3 years into their journey, Thomas discovered that raising teenage daughters brought challenges he never imagined. Anne, now 15, was entering a phase that tested their relationship in new ways. It started with small things. Doors being closed more often, one-word answers replacing their usual heart-to-heart talks, and increasingly frequent sighs that seemed to carry the weight of the world. One evening, while helping with dinner dishes, Anne finally opened up. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living between two worlds," she said, carefully placing plates in the dishwasher. "At school, I'm the black girl with the Asian dad. At home, I'm trying to be the perfect oldest sister. It's like, where do I really belong?" The question hung in the air, heavier than the steam from the hot water running in the sink. Meanwhile, the twins were thriving in middle school, but their success brought its own complications. Grace made the advanced soccer team, while Joy didn't. For the first time in their lives, they were on different paths. Joy started skipping practices, and her grades began to slip. Thomas found himself navigating not just sibling rivalry, but the complicated emotions of two girls discovering their individual identities. Lily, now 9, was struggling with math, the subject she once loved. Her teacher suggested she might have anxiety, especially during tests. At home, she would burst into tears over homework, saying things like, "I'm not smart like before." Thomas spent nights researching ways to help her, eventually discovering that her struggles were tied to memories of academic pressure in her early years. Little Rose, at 7, started asking questions about their birth mother. During bedtime one night, she pulled out an old photo she kept hidden under her pillow. "Did she not love us enough to keep us?" she asked, her small voice trembling. Thomas felt his heart break and soar at the same time. Break for her pain, soar for her trust in asking him such a difficult question. Dating proved to be another challenge entirely. Thomas had been single since the adoption, focusing all his energy on the girls. But when he finally decided to try dating again, it was complicated. Some women seemed more interested in his hero story than getting to know him. Others disappeared as soon as they realized he really did have 5 daughters. Then there was Lisa, a fellow teacher who seemed different. She was kind, understood his dedication to his daughters, and even offered to help Anne with her college application essays. The girls actually liked her. But 3 months into dating, she got a job offer in another state. "I care about you," she said, "but I can't ask you to uproot 5 girls for me." Thomas understood, but it still hurt. The financial strain was becoming more noticeable too. Anne needed a laptop for school, the twins' soccer equipment wasn't cheap, and Lily's anxiety counseling added another monthly expense. Thomas picked up extra tutoring hours and started a small online teaching business, often working late into the night after the girls were asleep. But even in these challenging times, there were moments of pure joy that reminded them why they were family. Like when the twins surprised everyone by choreographing a dance for Thomas's birthday, roping all their sisters into performing it. Or when Lily, after weeks of practice, finally conquered her fear and solved a math problem in front of her class. One particularly tough evening, after dealing with Anne's mood swings, the twins' drama, Lily's tears over math, and Rose's questions about their past, Thomas sat alone in the kitchen, wondering if he was doing enough. Then he found a note in his lunch bag from the next day. The girls had worked together to write him a letter, each adding their own message. "Thanks for never giving up on us," wrote Anne. "You're the best soccer dad ever," added the twins. "I love how you help me be brave," Lily contributed. And Rose had drawn a heart with the words "Best Daddy" in wobbly letters. Looking at that note, Thomas realized that growing pains, while difficult, were just proof that they were growing, not just as individuals, but as a family. Every challenge they faced was making their bonds stronger, their love deeper, and their story richer. Amazing things can happen when you stop fighting the current and learn to swim with it. After years of ups and downs, Thomas and his daughters finally found their groove, turning their unique challenges into their greatest strengths. It all started during a family therapy session, where Anne made a breakthrough that changed everything. "You know what?" she said, looking around at her sisters and Thomas. "Maybe we don't need to fit in. Maybe being different is our superpower." The therapist smiled, and suddenly the room felt lighter, as if a heavy curtain had been lifted. The family started embracing their uniqueness in beautiful ways. Sunday nights became culture celebration dinners, where they'd cook dishes from both their Black heritage and Thomas's Asian background. The kitchen would fill with the smell of soul food mixed with dumplings, while music from both cultures played in the background. Their neighbors started asking to join these dinners, turning their home into a community hub of cultural exchange. The twins found their calling in unexpected ways. Grace's soccer skills caught the attention of college scouts, while Joy discovered her talent for photography, capturing beautiful moments of their family life. Together, they started a social media project called Our Family Story, sharing snippets of their daily life that inspired other adoptive families. Lily, once struggling with anxiety, turned her experience into strength. With Thomas's encouragement, she started a lunch club at school called Brave Hearts, where kids could talk about their fears and challenges. Her math teacher was amazed at how she went from a nervous student to someone who helped others overcome their own math anxiety. Little Rose, now more confident than ever, became known as the family's joy spreader. She'd leave tiny encouraging notes in her sister's backpacks and Thomas's lunchbox. One day, her teacher called Thomas to share how Rose had comforted a new student who was feeling out of place, telling them, "Different is beautiful. Look at my family." Thomas's parenting style evolved too. He stopped trying to be the perfect dad and instead focused on being the dad his girls needed. When Anne wanted to learn more about black hair care, he didn't just watch YouTube videos. He organized a workshop at their house, inviting black women from their community to share their knowledge and stories. The house became alive with new traditions. Every Friday night was Dream Board Night, where they'd sit together and talk about their hopes and plans. The walls of their living room displayed these dreams: Anne's college aspirations, the twins' sports and art goals, Lily's ideas for helping others, and Rose's colorful visions of their future. Even their challenges became opportunities for growth. When Anne faced discrimination at a school event, instead of getting angry, she organized a diversity awareness week that got the whole school talking. The twins used their different interests to show that being identical didn't mean being the same. Lily's math club became so popular that other schools started copying the idea. Thomas found his own rhythm as a single dad. He learned to balance work, family, and self-care, showing his girls that it's okay to take care of yourself while taking care of others. His online teaching business grew, allowing him to spend more time at home. He even started a support group for single adoptive parents, sharing the lessons he'd learned along the way. Their home became known as the Lighthouse House in the neighborhood, a place where anyone could find acceptance and understanding. Other parents started coming to Thomas for advice, especially those with adopted children or mixed families. The girls took pride in helping these families feel less alone. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Rose asked, "Dad, remember when people said we couldn't be a real family?" Thomas nodded, and she continued, "They were right. We're not a regular family. We're better because we chose each other." That simple statement summed up their journey perfectly. They had stopped trying to fit into anyone else's idea of what a family should be and created their own beautiful definition. Their differences became their strength, their struggles became their stories, and their love for each other became an inspiration to others. In finding their rhythm, they hadn't just created a happy family, they'd created a template for what modern families could be: diverse, resilient, and bound together by love rather than conventions. 7 years into their journey, the morning everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. Anne sat at the kitchen table, staring at her laptop, her finger hovering over the refresh button. The whole family crowded around her, still in their pajamas, holding their breath. Thomas had his arm around her shoulders, trying to stay calm for her sake, but his heart was racing just as fast as hers. "I can't look," Anne whispered, closing her eyes. "Someone else check." Little Rose, now 11, reached over and clicked the mouse. The room erupted in screams of joy. There it was, Anne's acceptance letter to her dream college, along with a full scholarship. "You did it." Thomas hugged her tight, tears streaming down his face. "You really did it." "No, Dad," Anne corrected him, her voice shaking with emotion. "We did it." She was right. This wasn't just Anne's victory. It was a triumph for their entire family. The twins had quizzed her for her SATs. Lily had kept everyone quiet during Anne's study sessions. Even Rose had contributed by bringing Anne snacks and encouragement during her late-night essay writing marathons. The news spread quickly through their community, their house filled with neighbors bringing celebration dishes, teachers stopping by to congratulate them, and friends sharing in their joy. Mrs. Parker, the teacher who had first helped Thomas understand the challenges of raising black daughters, brought a special cake decorated with Anne's college colors. But the real celebration came later that night, when it was just the 6 of them. They sat in their backyard, where Thomas had strung up fairy lights years ago for their first family movie night. Each person shared a memory of Anne's journey. The twins remembered how Anne had helped them with their homework while working on her own college applications. "You showed us that being smart is cool," Grace said, while Joy added, "and that being different is our strength." Lily talked about how Anne had supported her through her anxiety, always reminding her to breathe and believe in herself. "You're the reason I'm not afraid of math anymore," she said, making everyone laugh through their tears. Little Rose's tribute was simple but powerful. She had made a picture book titled My Big Sister Anne, filled with crayon drawings of all the times Anne had been there for her, teaching her to read, braiding her hair, chasing away nightmares. Thomas couldn't even speak at first. He just looked at his oldest daughter, remembering that quiet 12-year-old who had been so protective of her sisters at the children's home. Now here she was, 18 and ready to take on the world, but still just as caring, still just as strong. When people said I couldn't raise 5 daughters, he finally managed to say, "You were the one who never doubted me. You helped me learn to be a father. You showed me what strength really looks like." The scholarship meant everything. It was Anne's ticket to becoming the first person in her biological family to attend college. But it was more than that. It was proof that love, determination, and support could overcome any obstacle. News of Anne's achievement sparked something in their community. Other parents started asking her to talk to their kids about college. The local paper ran a story about their family, focusing not on their differences, but on their success. Anne's high school invited her to speak to younger students about perseverance. The impact rippled through their own family, too. The twins' grades improved as they were inspired by their big sister's success. Lily started talking about becoming a teacher, just like her dad. Even Rose began setting higher goals for herself, announcing that she wanted to be just like Anne, but also a dancer. That summer became a special time for their family. While helping Anne prepare for college, they all learned valuable lessons about growing up and letting go. Thomas found himself teaching Anne practical skills, like budgeting and laundry, while trying to memorize every moment with his firstborn. One evening, as they worked together organizing her college supplies, Anne looked at Thomas and said something that made all the years of struggle worthwhile. "You know, Dad, when you first adopted us, people said you were crazy. But you weren't crazy, you were brave. And you taught us to be brave too." 10 years had passed since that life-changing day when Thomas first brought his daughters home. Now, on a bright spring morning, the family gathered again, this time in a college auditorium. Anne, dressed in her graduation gown, stood on stage as the valedictorian of her class. Looking out at the crowd, she saw them all. Thomas beaming with pride in the front row, the twins now high school seniors themselves, Lily filming everything on her phone, and Rose holding up a hand-painted sign that read, "That's my sister." Even Mrs. Parker, their longtime family friend and mentor, sat with them, dabbing tears from her eyes. As Anne began her speech, her voice carried the strength of their shared journey. 10 years ago, she said, people told my dad he was making a mistake. A single man adopting 5 sisters. They said it couldn't work. She paused, looking directly at Thomas. But love doesn't follow rules. Love creates its own path. In the audience, Thomas thought back to all the moments that had led to this day. The late-night homework sessions, the morning rushes to school, the countless parent-teacher conferences. The times when things seemed impossible, and the times when everything felt just right. The twins were now star athletes with college scholarships of their own. Grace to become team captain of her high school soccer team, while Joy's photography had won state competitions. Their photos and stories about growing up in a multicultural family had touched thousands of lives on social media. Lily, once struggling with anxiety, was now president of her school's peer counseling program. She'd turned her experiences into strength, helping other kids overcome their own challenges. Her math scores had soared, and she was already taking advanced placement classes. Rose, the baby of the family, had blossomed into a confident teenager who danced competitively and mentored younger adopted children. She'd started a club at her school called Family is Love, bringing together kids from all kinds of family backgrounds. After the ceremony, as they gathered for photos, a young couple approached Thomas. "We've been following your family's story," they said. "You gave us the courage to adopt siblings too." Thomas smiled, remembering all the times he doubted himself, all the nights he'd wondered if he was doing the right thing. Back at home, during their celebration dinner, each family member shared what the journey had meant to them. The house was fuller now, not just with people, but with memories, achievements, and dreams realized. "Remember when we couldn't even make breakfast without chaos?" The twins laughed, now expert cooks themselves. "Remember when we thought we needed to look like other families?" Lily added, looking around at their beautiful mix of cultures and personalities. "Remember when people said we wouldn't make it?" Rose chimed in, squeezing Thomas's hand. Thomas looked at his girls, no longer little girls, but young women who had defied every expectation. Anne with her degree, heading to graduate school. The twins preparing for college, each with their own dreams to chase. Lily planning to become a teacher like him. Rose, still in high school, but already showing leadership beyond her years. That evening, as the celebration wound down, Anne presented Thomas with a surprise, a book they had all worked on secretly. Titled Our Journey, it was filled with photos, stories, and memories from their 10 years together. The last page held a simple message. To the man who taught us that family is built with love, not looks. You didn't just change 5 lives, you showed the world what real love can do. Looking through the book, Thomas found himself surrounded by his daughters, each one a testament to the power of love over prejudice, of determination over doubt, of family over fear. The critics who had once questioned his ability to raise 5 black daughters were now silent, overshadowed by the undeniable success of their family. As the sun set on this milestone day, Thomas realized they had done more than just prove people wrong. They had shown people a new way to be right. Their family had become a beacon of hope, showing that love knows no boundaries, that family is what you make it, and that sometimes the most beautiful stories come from the most unexpected beginnings. They had written their own definition of family, one that would inspire generations to come. And in doing so, they had created something even more precious than success. They had created a legacy of love that would ripple out into the world, touching countless other lives with its message of hope, courage, and unconditional love.